Hello everyone, my name is Melissa Tran and I chose the Me Too movement for my research topic paper. The reason I chose this is because I knew a little bit about it. I didn't really know about the movement in details, and I wanted to further my knowledge on this Me Too movement, and I definitely learned a lot during our process of essay writing as well as making our presentations. So without further ado, let's go. What does Me Too mean? A phrase that resembles agreeance, it holds significance when you look into its deeper meaning. In October 2017, the hashtag MeToo trended globally, reaching many across the world. The MeToo movement can be defined as a social movement that is against sexual violence and sexual assault, advocating for females who survive sexual violence. This encourages and supports them to speak out about their experience. So my first source of evidence, or a number of my evidences, are based on media entertainment as a whole, and I found a lot of sources actually that were media entertainment because the Me Too movement originated from social media, and I saw a lot of influences on not only social media but like TV shows, books, podcasts, library, public places, and yeah, it just really shows that they want to also be a part of the change. And that's the direction where it's going. So the show, I'm sure some of you may know, it's a Netflix TV series, 13 Reasons Why, created by Jay Asher. Season 2 specifically, they were focusing on sexual abuse, but overall the show also showcases taboo subjects that are also serious, like such as bullying, rape, sexual assault, eating disorders, and I thought this was a very important source in the Me Too movement because the creator actually said that he wanted to be a part of the movement. He wanted to make a storyline that's about sexual abuse and how to deal with it, as well as the causes and consequences it may take. And in this particular episode 13 of season 2, Jessica, which is one of the characters that you can see on the screen, she is a sexual victim of a character in the show as well, Bryce Walker. She was sexually abused, and they were taking a lawsuit case on him because, he was denying it, and there was actually other victims as well that was caused by this character. And I thought this was a very important influence for the Me Too movement because it just shows that you don't know who's going through sexual abuse. People were shocked, people were surprised when they found out Jessica had it. And in real life, you can also apply that as well. When you think of your neighbor, your sister, your brother, you wouldn't think that they might be sexually abused. It might be a shock to you. And so it's a learning experience for people that are not just a victim, but people around you as well are also affected. The next source of evidence I will be talking about is the book, The Moment of Lift by Melinda Gates. Melinda Gates, she worked in Microsoft for many years of her life, especially in her 20s, and she was talking about her experience in her workforce, and she was talking about how men treated her. She said men made her feel uncomfortable. She didn't feel like there was much diversity because the tech industry, there was not many women. It was a more dominated field by men, and she didn't feel like she fit in. And so she was at a loss. She said, well, I really like this opportunity. I like working at Microsoft. I love it. It's exciting, but I don't feel comfortable. What do I do? I'm at a loss. And so now years later, she makes sure that nobody feels like that anymore. She wants to make sure working at Microsoft as well as other tech industries is not uncomfortable. She wants it to make it a healthy environment. And by doing that, she's traveling around the world. She's helping women and men to realize what's important and what's right and what's wrong. And she and 11,000 other workers also got together, and they all traveled together, making differences, donating money, going charities, and she's just really a good leader in this, in impacts of Me Too movement. And yeah. The next source of evidence is Speaking Secrets, which is a podcast by Georgina Campbell. I chose this podcast because as I was listening to it, I was thinking about other countries, not just America, and how they were impacted as well. And New Zealand is a very important country that was influenced by the Me Too movement because they were also dealing with many struggles and challenges on sexual abuse and harassment and how they can decrease those statistics. And One of the things I learned in this is that New Zealanders, they were very closed about opening about their experiences on some of the experiences that were explained in the podcast. And this actually encouraged lawmakers and policymakers to become more involved in it, to help society, to help people that are victims know that they're okay, and to also decrease it. Like, they want to make sure they're educated on how they can help and how they can realize the symptoms of what this person, who A might be doing to B, what's wrong and what's right. And I thought that was a very good result of the Me Too movement, that it helped, that it increased awareness, and how it resulted at the end, and how it's still going on right now. Another podcast I chose is Solving Me Too, which is hosted by Julia Klein. So this podcast was absolutely, it was wow for me, because they were talking about a 27-year-old woman, and she's a reporter, she's a journalist, and that's an area I kind of want to get into. She was talking about her experience with journalism and in Chicago media. She had a very uncomfortable workplace with men, because at that time men were also dominating her field, and she felt like she was treated of less value. People were disrespecting her, people were not treating her as they should, and another thing that was also coming up in this podcast was talking about women's beauty. So when you're beautiful, people might, see you, they might look at you, they might want to be in your personal life, and for her, people disrespected her. Like, they wanted to be up in her personal life. They made rumors and they spread scandals. And of course, men were envious. They were envious of her husband, and they wanted to start drama. And it involved her husband. And unfortunately, at the end, it resulted in her husband committing suicide because he received a lot of hate. And this was a very learning experience for her, and also society, that people that are cruel, they will look at you and they will just do things that will affect your life just because you're beautiful. And she was also a very good journalist as well. And it's important to understand that journalists, their life is so publicized. And this was a big influence of the Me Too movement, because it costed her husband due to all of this sexual abuse from men, and not even just abuse, it's borderline, I don't know how to say it, but like terror. Like, it's absolutely insane. And so I thought the Me Too movement also influenced other things, like understanding what is not acceptable and what is. So in the article, I chose Where Me Too Came From and Where It's Going, written by Catherine. This article, it's specifically talk about the show Mad Men, and the quote, as you can see, was "She wanted it." And as I continued reading the article, they were talking about a lawsuit cases, and they were talking about how it takes 3 to 4 women to get the lawsuit to be serious, for them to believe the woman. And I thought that was insane, because that means the first 2 women or men, they were not believed. They're doubted. They probably disbelieved them and they just let it go. They probably ended up saying she wanted it, probably. And I thought that was a very harsh thing to learn. Like, it's a very serious and real thing that's happening, because the Me Too movement is trying to increase awareness that you have to understand some of these perspectives. You need to believe them, whether they're not saying the right thing or not. They might be not saying the right thing, but you still need to take their words as much as you can, and not just disregard them like they did in before. And now policymakers and lawmakers are actually increasing, and the statistics are better now. They'll take one woman or men, their words seriously. Okay, so now I'll be talking about laws and policies, as I was getting into that, what's changed and what's not. So in the article written by Karina Nall, there was a quote by a policymaker, in fact, and it said, "I can still smell him." And I thought this article was it was a very good thing to learn about as I was going in this movement, because there's a lot of negative and pros and cons in this. And this is definitely a pro. So the Child Victims Act was passed in 2013, and that means any sexual any victims that were abused by sexual abuse, they can file a lawsuit against their perpetrator before they turn 55 years old. And that's amazing because it shows that people are still with them, whether they're comfortable or not to confess their situation or experience trauma, because some people are deeply affected by this and they don't know what to say. They're not comfortable saying it yet, and this allows them the time that they need to heal and to be able to prepare themselves if they want to let out their story or not. Okay, so speaking of public places, previously, Radcliffe Schlesinger Library, in this article written by Colleen Walsh, it was talking about the collection that they made. It's an original collection called the Me Too Movement. It's influenced by the Me Too Movement, and they have their own collection. They collected data and information from other places, like real evidence, and they making an own original collection, all the information, where it came from, many stories, and they're putting it as a collection as their own. And when you go into a library, you can see the collection and you can learn and educate on the Me Too movement and more about it, as well as its history. And I thought that was a big step in society, because libraries, public places, they want to make a change. They want to be a part of this movement. And so they're becoming part of it by giving people the evidence they want. And Me Too movement originates from social media, but now it's a variety of places that you can learn about the movement. You can go into a library and you can learn from it. You can watch documentaries, listen to podcasts, watch articles. And it's not just about social media anymore. It's about getting all connecting and making sure you can get these information. So I thought that was a very cool step. Another book I read was The Me Too, about how and why this happened, what it means, and how to make sure it never happens again. It's one of the quotes by this lady, by this woman. It said, "I do not want to add my name to a long list." And in this book, she was talking about her experience, and it's a very different approach in my sources. The reason I chose this because we have to understand the different feelings that people might feel. Like, although movements are a positive thing, there's also negative feelings that might come along with it from victims. They might feel like, oh, I'm part of a club. I'm just a member of this club. Like, how is this helping me? Like, what I've been through shouldn't be showcased to everyone. And that's perfectly fine to feel like that. I think it's important to understand that people might feel like that. Like, not everyone's gonna see this as a positive outcome, and that's okay. I think it's as long as we are aware of this movement, as well as aware of everyone's feelings, because society, there's many people out there, and we need to make sure we take them seriously and listen to what they're saying. And I think that's what this movement is all about. So what are some solutions we can hope for? I hope that, I was reading this article, How Men Can Be a Part of the Solution in the Me Too Era, written by Jagannathan Mira. And it was talking about men and how they feel like they have to contain a masculinity. Like, society knows that men are always seen as masculine, and they're feeling like they have to be in the so-called man box, which just basically says they can't portray any negative, sad emotions, sensitive emotions. And that's very damaging, because society, this might be a different perspective, but people might see women as, okay, she's a woman, she can be sensitive, she can be weak, which is a very massive stereotype. And I think society's realizing now that men shouldn't have to do that. They can be sensitive, they can be weak, they can be just like us. They don't have to hide. And once they do that, once they start letting out their real feelings, they're able to connect and converse with us more, as well as everybody. And that's what the movement was all about. Like, people were conversing through social media, and that's what got people to connect with one another, causing more words to let out, causing more attention. So some predictions I hope we can see is that there will be definitely more reporting of sexual abuse situations, and people will become more aware of that. And people will start educating more about this movement, just like myself, learning about the movement and as well as its purpose and how there's ways you can help. Thank you for listening. I hope you have a happy holidays.